Hello everybody, on Sunday last week we did our first ever YouTube live stream and there were so many comments we couldn't keep up, so in this video we're going to go through the ones we missed. Let's go. Andrew Brooks, first of all, says, I'm in an 8-foot by 8-foot cube of a room. Best easy room treatment tips, please.
Headphones. If you're in an 8-foot by 8-foot room, you're really going to struggle. So three steps, let's try and get it down nice and short. 3-step process. Number one, if you're using speakers, optimize your listening position for the most even bass response. And there's a video we did, which we'll link in the description, showing you exactly how to do that. Step 2, treat your first reflection points. Step 3, use headphones and reference your mixes on as many different systems in as many different places as you possibly can. So in the car, on a mate's hi-fi, etc, etc. That's a really awkward size space to work with, but don't let it put you off. Keep making music. It doesn't matter. You haven't got an optimal room. Doesn't matter at all. There's ways you can get around it.
Zila Microphone says, what do you think about DBX 286S for recording vocals at home? Is it a good alternative for a little bit of processing? Now, he's been doing this a lot longer than I have. I have zero experience on that bit of hardware, so take it away.
So the 286, the DBX, it's a 1U rack unit, and I think it's a mic preamp and a compressor, basically. It's at the budget end. I think they're about 130, 150 quid, something like that. So I don't think it's going to give you any more than a mic pre and a decent audio interface these days will. It depends what you want it to do. There's a danger as well with compressing on the way in, and that is that if you overdo it, you can't undo it. Once you've overcompressed something, you've overcompressed something, and that's it. If you do it after the fact with a plug-in, you can back it off a bit. So my advice would be, don't bother. Get a decent audio interface with a decent mic pre, get a decent microphone that suits your voice, and learn how to use that microphone. And that doesn't mean just putting it in front of your face and singing into it. That means getting your mic technique right, and that will be a much more valuable thing for you than getting a DBX or any other kind of channel strip kind of hardware processor. So your P's and your B's, when you say a P, don't say it straight in, move your head and do the P like that, and then that plosive doesn't get into the capsule, but it still picks up the P, still picks up the consonant. S's are really difficult. There's so many records out at the moment where we're just hearing awful de-essing on them, some really big hits as well, and it's because the singers don't know how to not get S's into the microphone in the first place. Take a word like sausages and put a pair of headphones on and put the microphone in front of your mouth and go sausages, 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 like that, and you'll find that there's a place where sausages sounds natural and the S's aren't too prominent. And then every time you sing an S, practice putting your head in that position. So the same as you do with the P's and the B's, don't get them into the microphone in the first place. Same with sausages. So yeah, don't get a 286S unless you really fancy one. Buy a load of sausages.
Yum. Cos Billingham says, any tips for someone that's gone old school and bought a Soundcraft Ghost desk, or should I just top myself now? Don't do that. We were looking at a Soundcraft Ghost a couple of years ago.
Years and years ago.
It's a perfectly viable desk option. You know, you've not made a mistake there. Again, this is something that I've not personally used, so I'll pass this over to you.
My stomach's rumbling away.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know if you can hear it on the mic, but it is anyway. Yeah, Soundcraft Ghost. The main thing you should be looking at to do with a Soundcraft Ghost is, nope, not burn it. Just have fun. Have fun with it. They're great desks. They sound great. I seem to remember them being, they first came out in the mid-90s, and I've used a couple. There was the LE, which wasn't very good, and there was a sort of Ghost proper with the meter bridge, which was much better. I seem to remember them being a little bit noisy, but there were loads of albums recorded in the 90s on the Soundcraft Ghost. Mic pre's are good, the EQ's good, and you've got lots of inserts and, you know, sends and returns and lots of places you can plug hardware and just have fun, and that's what it's about. So have fun with it. Great desk. Knock yourself out.
The M-Dog Show says, is this studio in your house or do you rent a commercial unit? It's not in either of our houses. We rent a commercial unit in sunny rural Essex, UK. So when we moved in here, it was just a huge tin shed. It was absolutely empty. I'll put a picture above this on the video. And yeah, basically spent, I think it was a total of about 2.5 years building 4 rooms in this studio complex. We built it ourselves, that's why it took so long, but always good for trying to save a bit of money.
Yep.
So yes, commercial unit, 4 rooms, all handmade by myself and Mark, with a good bit of help from Mark's housemate Nigel. Big up Nigel.
Big up Nigel.
Hello Floppy. Nathan Oakley says, I'd love to pick your brains on the live stream settings we used. So we're really new to live streaming. That first stream that we did on Sunday was a bit of a test run. Thankfully it did go well, other than when I accidentally muted us for a minute. I was getting roasted in the comments for that.
Quite right too.
Yeah, so it was a very basic setup because we were new to it. We wanted to keep it very simple. Nothing could go wrong, apparently. Basically streaming in 1080p, because although we record our videos in 6K and then export at 4K, the highest the HDMI output will do on the camera is 1080p. So streaming was in 1080 and it was a constant bit rate of 9,500 kilobits a second if you want to get really nerdy. And the audio was 128 kilobits a second at 48 kilohertz. And for the audio inputs, it was literally just my mic and Mark's mic, that's hard to say, going straight into an SSL2 audio interface with a limiter on Streamlabs OBS. We tried using OBS to start with, but Streamlabs had a little more functionality. So yeah, there we go, nice and simple. I'm really going to butcher this name. Jota Soto Diaz, is mixing and mastering dying as a business? I think it's transforming, I'll give it that. I think moving online is a good idea for many people. I mean, what do you think?
I don't think it's dying as a business. I think it's evolving in consumer land. By consumer land, I mean people that aren't doing it for a living. I think if you're doing it for a living and you're in the top 5%, then nothing's changed really. Bands are still going to big studios to track records, and they're still being mixed by people who are really good at mixing, and those mix engineers are then still sending their mixes to mastering. And it's kind of the same as it's always been. People say, you know, you can't make any money making music these days. Well, you couldn't make any money making music in 1978 unless you were Led Zeppelin. You know, your local pub bands were local. You couldn't even make a record in 1978 unless you had a load of money behind you and a label behind you, because it was a massively expensive process. So I don't think in terms of commerciality that anything's really changed, but things are evolving. Obviously technology is evolving all the time. I think if the whole world goes exclusively to Atmos, then the job of a mastering engineer will largely be redundant, and they'll have to look into mixing in Atmos, because there's very blurred lines. There's not necessarily a mixing stage and a mastering stage to Atmos. It all tends to be done at the mixing stage. So I think it's evolving. Is it dying as a business? No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of people who want to, they're coming out of university or whatever, and they want to earn a living just mixing other people's music at home or whatever, and it's incredibly difficult because you and 100 million other people, you've got to have something that differentiates yourself. You've got to have a niche. You've got to have a network, and a lot of people that are just working at home in their bedrooms haven't got a network, because they do a bit of mixing for themselves or whatever, and then they'll go and play a game for 6 hours, and then they'll be on Instagram. You need to get out, you need to meet people, you need to do all those things that you used to have to do back in the day. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And
just a keyword that popped up there is niche. If you market yourself as I will mix everything, I will master everything kind of person, for some people that works. For other people, maybe you might not be getting as much work as you'd hope. So try niching down into one genre. Find what your favorite music is, for example, metal, and advertise yourself as a metal mixing engineer or a metal mastering engineer. Because if someone is looking on the website, they're going to want someone that's specialized in one particular area, because they've spent lots of time working just with rock or metal bands, so they know that genre of music inside out. They don't do hip hop one week and then they do jazz the next week. Find your own niche, basically, something to really focus on and improve and become the best in that genre.
Yeah, work to your strengths and differentiate yourself. That's important, and network. And the most important thing for someone who's trying to do this as a business or do it as an income is don't blame the industry and everyone else if it doesn't work. If you're trying to earn a living as a mixing engineer and you can't, it's your fault. It's not the fault of the music industry or anything, or COVID or anything at all. It's your fault. And that's the hardest thing to realise, and you need to do something about it. So yeah, differentiate, carve yourself a niche. There's not many people who are good at everything. There's no one I know that can do an absolutely blinding heavy metal record one week and then work on opera the week after. You need to kind of specialise and do what suits you and your tastes, and do something different. Have a unique aspect to what you're doing, and then people will want that thing, and you have to market it. And it's running a business. You have to do you have to run it as a business if you want it to be your business. Simple as that.
The M-Dog Show says, what software do you use for mastering? I'll let you answer this one.
If you mean DAW, I tend to flip between Logic Pro, because I know it really well, and Studio One. If I'm doing an album for someone, I'll do it in Studio One, because I can put it all there and I can do all the things I need to do with balancing tracks. I can do DDP files for CD, all as a homogeneous thing. If I'm doing an individual track, if someone sends me one track through, then I tend to do it in Logic Pro, just because it's a little bit quicker for me, because I'm more used to it. So there you go. There's no specific plugins I'm using. I'm just as happy using the standard EQ in Logic as I am FabFilter Pro Q3 or anything else. Doesn't really matter to me. I'm doing very subtle things anyway. So yeah, Logic Pro, Studio One.
David SJ, this was the guy that had that commented during our live stream and had 2,000 plugins in his library. And just as I asked him to, he did sign up to our Discord channel, which you can join, presentdayproduction.com/Discord. He joined and sent me screenshots of his plugin library, and it was insane. Wow. I've never seen that many plugins. I was impressed. Whether you use them all or not, I don't know, but it's quite something. He said, do you use any kind of analysis tool like isotope, tonal, balance control? Do you try and fit the curves, or do you trust your ears over analyzers?
Ears over analyzers.
Yeah, my personal approach is I tend not to rely on analyzers and stuff. I listen to it, I trust the speakers, and if it sounds right, it sounds right. You know, obviously there are certain things that you have to use software to look at, but for general listening, tone, volume, you know, balance, that kind of thing, I'd never rely on software to do it. I'd just listen to it.
Yeah, I'm the same. It doesn't matter what your audio looks like. A few people, not many, but I get a handful of people that I do mastering for, and they'll send me through a screenshot of the EQ curve of their master. You know, they love the sound of it and they're happy, but they just sent through a screenshot of the EQ curve and are just asking what's going on in the mid signal at 80 hertz or whatever. Something looks a bit odd, and so don't care.
That's your answer.
It's all about what it sounds like. Yeah, if there's, I do use metering and analyzers and stuff like that if there's something wrong, or quite often one of the first things I'll do when I get a track through for mastering is I'll just load it into RX, because I can't really do anything with it in RX. All I can do is listen to it and have a bit of a look at it as well. And quite often if there's clicks or something like that I might miss, that'll show up really obviously in RX, and then I can contact the artist and go, this thing, there's a noise at 1:29 or whatever, should that be in there? And quite often they go, oh yeah, that's a artistic choice, leave it alone. And I do. There was someone coughed on a track. I was quite a major artist, they coughed. You could hear a cough in the vocal take, and I called him up and said, there's a cough, do you want me to get rid of that? And he's like, no, leave that in. I was like, right, okay, just checking. Always worth checking, yeah. But it's audio. All that matters is what comes out of the speakers, nothing else.
Cat on LSD3 said, do you know about the PSI AVAA C20 active bass trap? Yes, we do. So PSI is a company that we've only recently started working with. We're not sponsored by them, we just like what they do. So PSI is a Swiss-based speaker manufacturer. However, they also do active bass trapping. And their speakers are really good. They're the first set of... So we've reviewed the A25 three-way and the A17 two-way. The A17 is the first set of two-way speakers I've ever liked. Normally I'm very, very picky about it, and I tend to be disappointed by two-ways. However, the A17s are very good. Highly recommend checking them out. Again, not sponsored. The AVAA bass trap is something we are looking at testing for a review. They will be sending us one more than likely, just waiting to find out when. So yes, we've heard about them, we know about them, and we hopefully will be able to share some information on them with you guys at home. Just hold on tight, keep an eye on the channel.
Yeah, there's also a question from Niels Nielsen which says, any thoughts on Trinnov? I use it for my ATC SCM25s with subs. Good choice of speaker there, Niels. I have a very well treated room and just made something greater. Have you tried the Trinnov ST2 Pro? I have experienced Trinnov in various studios that I've worked in over the years, but I haven't actually had the chance to get my hands on one myself and tweak it to my own preferences. Handily, Paul from Emerging UK, who distributes PSI, also distributes Trinnov in the UK. So he's going to come up with a Trinnov and some AVAA bass traps and give us a demo in this room, and we'll set stuff up and tune it and tweak it and do a video on that for you.
Tangled Speech Jurovic said, have you tried a binaural mixdown but only the side info of the binaural info? No. So no. We have tried various ways of recording binaural, as well as us just walking around the head, the little binaural head mic, just speaking into it, which is very cool. We've tried having a quad sound, so kind of two speakers at the front, two at the back. One version recording the full stereo output on both sets of speakers. One recording just reverbs and kind of spatial effects on the rear speakers and the full stereo output on the front. And another one with, it was synths and certain effects added onto the back speakers. But no, we haven't tried the mid-side approach. I mean, we can try it, but I don't know, do you think it would be worth it?
I don't see what that would achieve, but I'll try it. Now you've said it. No, I haven't, but I'll give it a try. But I don't see why you'd only want to listen to the side signal. Surely it wouldn't work then as a binaural recording. I don't know.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll give it a try, and you might have stumbled across something groundbreaking.
Yeah. So maybe at some point we'll do a video on that.
Yeah, we'll give it a try, see how it sounds.
Cos Billingham said, what's the worst piece of gear you've ever had in the studio? Now there's two bits of kit that pop up. The Slate Raven MTI touchscreen DAW controller. Fantastic idea to be able to use a multi-touch touchscreen to control everything in your door. You know, fader control, knob control, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely brilliant idea, but it doesn't work. Major problem there.
Yeah, well,
it
didn't work for us. No, I think it works for Stephen Slate.
Yeah, in our studio we just had endless problems where it either wouldn't talk to the DAW because it relies on a system to kind of overlay onto your DAW, so it's not physically controlling the DAW by touch. It either wouldn't communicate between the software, or you'd turn a fader up and then get 100 million decibels of tambourine flying into your head. There were a few issues with it. It was good fun when it worked, I'll give it that. You know, it's a bit pricey, but it's good fun.
It just didn't work very often.
But it didn't work very often.
And you had to buy, and not only buy the thing, but you had to buy licenses for whatever DAW you wanted to use it on as well, which weren't cheap. They were well into 3 figures for the licenses. And I know what you're going to say for the second worst piece of
Go on, try me.
gear we had in the studio, and I think it's going to be another control surface type thing. Would it possibly be the SSL Nucleus?
It would be.
So we went, SSL very kindly invited us over for a demo of the Matrix many years ago, which was a 16-channel DAW controller and analog mixer, or kind of summing mixer combined with lots of inserts and outserts on New word, outserts on DB25 connectors, and you could connect all your hardware up and then you could patch it all digitally, and it was a great system. We didn't go for one of those. We decided to go for the Nucleus in the end. And I'm glad, really, we didn't go for the Matrix, because the door control side was very much based on the Nucleus. And it had the same problem, really, I think, that the Slate Raven had, and that it was... There's generally only one way you can control a DAW, and that's through Mackie Control or Huey, because they were kind of the standard set back in the early days. So everything has to be translated into that. So the cleverer a control surface system gets, it's still got to be sort of
It gets
bottlenecked down into that thing. And the failure of the Nucleus, well, two failures. One was the audio interface side of it, which was appalling and doesn't work on any computer made after about 2012, as far as I know. And it used a third-party piece of software that you had to download from a third-party developer called MIDI over IP. Sometimes you had to turn the Nucleus on first, sometimes you had to turn the computer on first, sometimes you had to stand on your left leg while sticking your right finger up your left nostril, sometimes you had to stand on your right leg while sticking your left finger up your right nostril and your right finger in your left ear. Sometimes you had to stand on your head. It's like, what day is it? It's Thursday. Is it morning or afternoon? Oh, it's morning. So that means we need to turn the Nucleus on first today, and then we need to turn the Mac on second. We need to make sure Wi-Fi is turned off, otherwise nothing will work. What's happening now? The Nucleus is connected via the Cat5 cable. The Nucleus is trying to check my email. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. That's the worst piece of kit I've ever had.
Yes, we never had the luxury of trying the Nucleus 2. Maybe at some point we might venture down that dangerous road, but we haven't tried it yet. No,
well, audio, that used MADI, I think, didn't it, instead of USB. But the basic control surface functionality of it, which is what you want it for, was still MIDI over IP.
Hellcat5, who's really active on our Discord chat, says, what's been your most favourite project to work on? I'll go first. I've worked with so many people in the years that I've been doing this, it would be impossible to pick a favourite. There are a few that I've really enjoyed, but I think nailing it down to one would just be impossible. So I'm going to say working on YouTube content is now my favourite project. I really enjoy making stuff to help out you guys improve your music production and just be a bit creative when, you know, thinking of stupid ideas like taking SCM45s into the sea. Well, that was partly your idea. Yeah, making YouTube videos. I really enjoy it. What about you?
Well, same for me. It's impossible to pick stuff, and I've been doing it loads more years than you have as well. So some of the memories I've got from some of the sort of big studios in London and stuff like that are too numerous to even mention. And I should remember a lot more of it than I do as well. But recently, if we're talking recently, let's keep it this studio. 3 projects spring to mind here. One was an album called Take a Shot, by a band called The Fantastics, who I've worked with and have been good friends with for many, many years. That was great. They recorded the whole album here, we mixed it here and then gave it a break and then mastered it here as well. We'll drop in a bit of B-roll of the vinyl for that because it's just a nice finished project, and they're a great band with a fantastic singer, and that was good fun, and it's my kind of genre as well, so that was good fun for me. In terms of mastering, if we're just talking mastering, then 2 highlights. One was working on the very last Chaz and Dave album with Chaz Hodges. Now Chaz he attended every single mastering session ever of any of their material, and I think pretty much anything he ever worked on, and he was largely known for the Chaz and Dave stuff, but the stuff he did before that was just insane so this is a guy who learnt to play piano by looking over Jerry Lee Lewis's shoulder when he was playing bass for him in his band. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And then, you know, I'm mastering his album and he's sitting next to me, and yeah, that's the only time I've really been a little bit nervous before a session. But he's such a lovely guy that, and you know, I'd done gigs with him and stuff in the past anyway, so but it was a bit nerve-wracking kind of, because he hated the sound of compression as well, so we were very much on the same wavelength, weren't we, generally. So that, and then the highlight for me at the moment is a project I'm working on at the moment right now, which I can't really talk about because of label non-disclosure agreements and stuff like that, but I think I did mention it in the live stream. I'm working on a lot of, not back catalogue, but additional catalogue of a major jazz artist, someone who was a huge influence on me when I was first starting out as a musician, someone whose music I discovered and literally only listened to that for 2 years straight. Massive influence, and now I'm remastering all of his stuff, all the new stuff that never got released. And it's incredible. And if you'd have told me 20 years ago, in 2021, you'll be mastering da-da-das stuff.
I wouldn't believe it.
No, every time I load one of his albums up and press play, I have to pinch myself, because it's not like it's a load of crap that never got put out. It's all incredible. It's just amazing. I'm thinking, what, wow, it's just amazing. And that's challenging, because there's lots of sort of bringing all this stuff together as a cohesive body of work sonically is quite challenging. But it's been going really well, and I've been putting an enormous amount of energy into it, and I'm loving it, really loving it. We'll do I can't say who it is at the moment, but we'll do he said he'll do a video call with us for you guys. So when we finish the project and everything's out and it's been released, then we'll do an interview and talk about the whole project, because it's really, really interesting stories, and yeah, that'll make a good video. So we'll do that, I promise.
Noah Valdez says, do you feel that a control surface speeds up your mixing workflow or helps your mix sound more natural, such as using faders instead of clicking and dragging inside the DAW?
Not when it's an SSL nucleus or a slate rate.
It helps when it works, obviously. So my personal approach on it is, I've grown up using computers, and I find it easier and quicker just to use a mouse. Every time I've had a DAW controller with 8 or 16 faders, I kind of forget it's there and then just end up reaching for the mouse out of instinct. It's nice, it's good to have a play with the faders, but my brain just works quicker with a mouse, so I just use a mouse and forget that the faders are even there. What about you?
I like a control surface, but I only like a control surface if you can get the mouse out of the way and the keyboard out of the way, and not have to worry about it. If you've got to keep going back to the mouse, then it doesn't really work. Then you need to start. Then it's like, well, I can't have a keyboard and a mouse and a control surface where I need them. So then you start tucking the control surface out of the way, and then it's like, well, what's the point in having it? Where I miss it for, I do miss it for mixing. Not that I'm doing much mixing, but when I am, for control over faders. But I am looking for a control surface for mastering, because I was using the PreSonus desk, just the DAW control side of that, for mastering, because I find it really useful for two things in mastering. One is to level the tracks on an album incredibly quickly, and the second thing is EQ. I like to automate EQ. So I'll listen to a song and go, okay, how does this make me feel? What's the emotion I'm getting from this? And is there any way I can massage that and enhance it? And it's quite often with very subtle EQ moves from verse to chorus or whatever throughout different sections. And it's nice to be able to just sit there with 8 faders under your hands and just shut your eyes and just gently, oh yeah.
Back in the room. Tobe says, when's the drum mixes video coming out? So quite a while ago, we asked everyone to send in their version of a mix of a multi-track drum recording we did here. Yes, it will happen. We were debating whether to put it in a live stream or a dedicated video, and we just haven't found the right place to put it in yet. However, we're going to try and do one live stream a month now that we got the ball rolling. So more than likely it will probably come in the next live stream we do, which will be in December. So I would hedge your bets on probably being December.
Well, let's not probably it. Let's just say we'll do it.
It will be December.
On the next live stream in December. And then you guys that are watching, you can comment on other people's mixes as well. That's why we want to do it as a live stream rather than just as a video saying what we think. It's, it's just about as much as what you think. So we'll do it. December live stream, we'll do it. That'll be the first thing on the live stream.
Beautiful. Stan Belikov says, what are your favourite studio snacks? Now, my studio snack, which some people wouldn't think is a snack, is a large Domino's pizza all to myself. I can just demolish one of those in about 3 seconds because I like food and I like pizza. Yum.
Yeah. I don't have snacks generally, do I?
No.
Lots of tea.
I was going to say you live on tea.
Lots of tea. I drink a ton of tea. Literally gallons of the stuff. Snacks, little bits of fruit every now and then. We don't really have crisps or biscuits or anything sort of like that around because we do we would just demolish them, and then you'd be as big as I am. Although I don't know where it goes when you eat stuff. It seems to, I don't know, it must fall out as soon as it goes in. But yeah, we don't really have studio snacks. Little bits of fruit. We have eaten quite a bit of chocolate over the weekend, because the chocolate that was in the
last
Black
video.
Friday video, we had to eat. We couldn't throw it away. We just had to eat it, didn't we?
It was good.
So yeah, we've eaten quite a bit of that lately. Next.
Next, Andrew Cameron. Do you have a fundamental plugin list, ones you couldn't live without, or they're a crutch to support you?
No.
I have the same answer, no. So I would take the same approach that I guess Mark would take, in that you listen to it and you see what needs doing. Sometimes there's nothing that needs doing. You might have multiple channels in a mix that have nothing on them at all, and that's totally fine. Sometimes that does happen. If I had to pick one that I could only use, I'd be very split between just using the stock plugins in either Logic or DaVinci Resolve, which is what I edit the videos in, or the Slate Virtual Mix Rack bundle. So for like a tenner a month or whatever, we get a load of Slate plugins, and one of them is a Virtual 500 series module rack. You can drag in compressors, EQs, etc. It all sounds pretty good, and when I mix, that tends to be the only thing I use. So I'll put the same compressor module and the same EQ module on any track that needs processing, and it kind of gives a homogeneous glue to everything. And then Verb Suite Classics, Reverb, and that's about it. Literally those two plugins, that's all I use. And if I was told that I couldn't use them anymore, I wouldn't be that upset. I'd just use Logic plugins.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. People think plugins are everything. It's like everything's plugins, plugins, plugins. Isn't it? It's just distraction, procrastination, and like we said in the last video, dopamine. That's all it is. It really doesn't matter. Any really good engineer or really good recording artist or really good musician will be able to get a damn good sound out of them in a room with a microphone and no plugins at all. So I don't, for mastering, I don't have a go-to nest of plugins that I'm always going back to. It's quite often different things on different projects, and quite often it doesn't matter if I'm mastering something in Logic or mastering something in Studio One. I'm not reaching for a certain plugin I can use on both. I'll quite often just go to the standard one in Logic and the standard one in Studio One, because it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
So there we go. Really simple answer. We don't have a plugin recommendation list. Nope. We keep it simple. SDR, so this is Shaw Raymond, who did the epic voiceover intro for a few of our videos, but most recently the SCM45 review.
The one where I was feeling a little horse.
That one. I'll drop it in the video right now.
Is this the best studio monitor? Is this the best studio?
You're right there, Mark. Do you want me to get Shaw to do it?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little horse.
Is this the best studio monitor for under 10K? Is the mid-range really made of pixies and unicorn poo? And why is Mark in the sea?
I'm in the sea!
Find out in this video.
Get on.
He said, how did you get in contact with the Kerr Acoustics guys? Now, Kerr Acoustic makes some really amazing speakers. Again, not sponsored, just enjoy what they do. They make some amazing studio speakers and home hi-fi speakers as well. And so how did we get in contact with them?
Phone him up.
There we go. Gave him a call.
Yeah, it was actually through, that's it, I just called him up. No, it was originally through Dan, who works next door to us. Is a PA and events company who we've worked with for many, many years. And we're neighbours at our old residence as well. And then when we moved here, there were 2 units available next to each other, and it was like, perfect, let's do that. So Dan Taylor, who's a lovely, lovely man and an absolutely astounding bag of knowledge on all things audio, and everything is incredible. He was housemates with Jez Kerr, who's the owner of Kerr Acoustic, when they were at uni together, and he said, are you aware of these speakers? And I wasn't, so I looked into them, and then Sound on Sound reviewed a pair of the two ways, and I thought, okay, if Phil Ward says they're good, then they are. So yeah, got in touch with Jez, went up to his place in Cambridge, and had a listen to some K100s, and then he offered to bring a pair down here for us to try out. And we did.
And then we kept them for ages.
Yeah, had them for about, I thought they'd be here for about a week. They weren't. They were here for about 4 months. But it was good for Jez as well, because he did say that this was the best room he'd ever heard them in, which was a compliment to our room. and he managed to get lots of measurements and stuff that I think he'd been struggling to get elsewhere. And it was interesting to compare them with, he could compare his speakers with the ATCs as well. And they, you know, you look at the charts and they come in pretty close.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're fantastic, absolutely fantastic speakers, really, really good. And he's got some exciting things in development, so we will keep you all up to speed on those as and when they appear.
We will indeed. Kaladan says, at what level do you master orchestral film score? Greetings from Saudi Arabia. It's always so interesting to see all the different places that our viewers watch from. There was loads on the live stream from Colombia, from, you know, just everywhere you can imagine. I was really impressed to see that many people from all over the world watching. It's a little bit mind-blowing, to be honest.
Quite amazing, isn't it?
So this guy's from Saudi Arabia. What level do you master orchestral film score?
Ask the person that you're mastering the film score for, because they will have a specific set of requirements, and stick to those requirements rigidly. Do not deviate from them at all, because they will reject it if you don't adhere to their guidelines. Generally, as a rule, film, TV, broadcast work is mastered at minus 24 LUFS, which is quite low. So that might be the requirement, in which case do that, and they'll normally give you a time period, because LUFS, it depends on what time you measure it over, doesn't it? It's whether it's over the whole piece or whether it's over the section of the loudest pieces. So ask the people that you're mastering it for. If it's Dolby Atmos, if it's going to Atmos, then their specification is minus 18 LUFS, and again, you have to stick to that. But again, how long is, you know, what period of time is that measured over? But ask the client, and they will give you a concrete answer, normally on paper, and you have to stick to it.
The Watchman Studio says, hey guys, your channel is always informative and always makes me laugh my tits off. That's amazing to hear. I have a pair of focal shaped twins and was wondering about monitor stand recommendations. Good question. Anything that doesn't move would be nice.
Yeah, a monitor. Really, you want two things out of a monitor stand. You want it to be strong enough to hold the speakers up, and you want it to not resonate or negatively impact the sound of the speakers. And the single pole adjustee in the middle bendy things are awful, because as your speakers are trying to force energy out that way, they're moving back that way, and you end up with smeariness and horrible things like that. I always rate the best monitor stands I've ever, I mean, the ones we made in here out of a standing desk are pretty good, because they're really heavy and they're really solid and they don't ring or resonate. They've been great. Although they have got tops on them from Recording Architecture, which probably cost about £5,000 when they were new, so that probably helps. But the best speaker stands I've ever used, and the ones I would always recommend to anyone, is piles of concrete blocks, 6-inch concrete blocks laid on their side with sheets of rubber between them, are fantastic. Or drain pipes, if you can find a way to make a base that will support 3 lengths of thick drain pipe or soil pipe, fill those with sand to completely deaden them, dry sand, and give them, although with drain pipe it doesn't matter too much, but yeah, just fill them with mass. But concrete blocks, they're cheap, and they're fantastic, and if you lay them on their sides, you don't have to worry about them falling over, because all the weight's going down and you've got a good, you know, base there. So concrete blocks with mouse mats in between, or anything kind of rubbery that will just help dull that to help sort of isolate them from the floor, are fantastic. That would be my recommendation for pretty much any monitors. Just big, heavy, lots of mass. That's what you want.
So sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but Vibav says, speaking of setups and speakers, do you think there's a huge difference between putting the speakers on the desk versus putting them on stands on the floor, both isolated, of course?
So Jesko kind of answered that in his own way when we did the video with him a couple of months ago, and he kind of said that the jury's out on isolation on speakers from a desk. I kind of agree with him. I think if your desk, if you just need to try, basically. I mean, a lot of people, as someone on the live stream the other day said, I can't physically make room to put my speakers on stands behind the desk. And the answer to that was, we'll put them on the desk then. But try and do what you can to make it work. So if you don't want your speakers on stands behind the desk, which generally sounds better because then they're completely isolated from the desk, although can sound worse depending on how, if you've got an enormous desk and your monitors are further back on stands and they're shoved in the corners of the room, so you're getting an artificial kind of load of bass coming out, and then the mid-range and the high end is reflecting off the vast expanse of desk, then they might sound worse than putting them on the desk. So you need to try and experiment, really. Just be aware that a lot of cheap desks can resonate in a really horrible way, so just be aware of that when you do put them on the desk, but just experiment and see what sounds best.
There's one here for you from Ben Maxwell. How would you feel about doing some videos on mastering? I'm currently an audio student who has done some work on mastering, but would love to hear Mark's approach.
Yeah, I'm actually doing an entire course on mastering and the way I do it, and right through from beginning to end. And when I say course, I don't mean it's going on Skillshare or
Teachable
behind a paywall or anything like that. It's going to be free on this YouTube channel. It's one of the things I'm working on, and you're away next week, so I'm going to have, once I've done my day job work and my mastering's out, I'm just going to do a whole course on it. The bit I'm really struggling with is what I'm mastering, and it's the same problem that a lot of people on YouTube have. Just watch any of Rick Beato's videos and how much he's moaning about copyright strikes and demonetization and videos being pulled and all kinds of things because you're using, you know, people's music for the purposes of, when all you're really doing is sending people to their music. So it's ridiculous, but that is the biggest problem. And even if I showed you how to master tracks that I've written and recorded with my band, that's still been put out by a label, and a lot of it's still on YouTube, and it's all on Spotify, and it's all on Apple Music, and you still, the algorithm just still gives you that strike when you, even if you know you've written it and recorded it yourself. So, which is why when we did the 1176 videos, we put a band together and recorded a specific piece of music that would only be used for that content, because that's really the only way you can do it. That for a mastering course gets very expensive very quickly, so that is a reason to put it behind a paywall, because then I can actually show you how I do it on commercial tracks. But I don't want to do that because then you've got to pay for it, and so I'm trying to work out the kind of administrative side of that. And lots of people have offered me, you know, oh, you can master my track, I don't care, and stuff like that. And it's like, well, no, it's on Spotify, so we're still gonna get
it has to be a one-off. This is for this.
We're still gonna get a ticking off from YouTube. So that's the difficult bit. That's the bit I'm struggling with at the moment. But we will find a way around it, and we will make it happen. So there we go.
David Mooring, last question and a half here. What Blackmagic Design gear have you got? How much are you using them, and what would you like in future firmware updates? That's a good question. So 2 bits of Blackmagic Design hardware here in the studio, although I'd like lots more. It's on my Christmas list. So we've got the Blackmagic 6K Pocket Cinema camera. I don't know why they call it Pocket Cinema camera. I'll put a picture of this on the video. It's huge, and you need big pockets for that. So 6K camera and the DaVinci Resolve Speed editor, just so I can whiz around the edits really quickly. And that's it, unfortunately, because it's all really expensive.
Well, it's not that expensive, really, in the grand scheme of things. They're bringing their prices down. They're a fantastic company.
Yeah, they've dropped their prices by half.
A lot of prices have come down. A lot. In terms of what would you like to see in future firmware updates, I don't know so much about the firmware side. In terms of the hardware side, I'd like to see them, I mean, camera-wise, they've just released the new Ursa Broadcast G2.
Which is cool.
Which looks like a fantastic camera. It's about half the price of the existing Ursa G2, but with the 6K sensor and a nice form factor, and looks like a fantastic bit of kit. But the two things I would really like to see on that, and I know there's various reasons why they can't make it happen at the moment, and it's because of the enormous R&D cost, is a damn good face detect and eye detect autofocus system and image stabilization, both digital and optical and physical image stabilization. Because when we've taken the cameras out, you take the Pocket 6K out to do a video shoot, it's got to go on a tripod or it's got to go on a gimbal. Getting it on a gimbal is a nightmare. You've got to put it on a shoulder rig. If you put it on a shoulder rig, it's that wide and that deep, so all the weight's at the front and it's very difficult. So you've got to have a
you get a dead shoulder after about 3 minutes.
You've got to have a huge rail system with a load of counterweights on the back to try and get the centre of, but it's not the most ergonomic thing in the world. So I'd like to see the Ursa Mini form factor, a square box with a lens on the front with really good autofocus and really good image stabilization.
Yep, and another question from David Mooring. What lav mics are you using?
I think Cheapo Card Company gave a really good answer to this. He said bog standard ones. Yes.
No, they are in fact, let me consult my XLR, the Mic Booster Clippy EM272 XLR.
Which, interestingly, are also the mics we had in Mr. Blokey, or have in Mr. Blokey, our dummy head. They're great microphones for about
60 quid each, I think.
Yeah, about 120 quid a pair. I think really good mics, the best we've found for, less than £1,000.
So there we go. Thank you so much for sending in those comments on the live stream. I'm really happy that we managed to catch up on some of those.
Yeah, sorry we missed them first time round, but that's why we did this video.
If you haven't already, join us on Discord and ask us more questions. More than happy to answer questions. Go to presentdayproduction.com/Discord. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, ding the ding dong, do all that fun stuff. And see you next time.